Hello, friends and fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice podcast. My name is Elle. First, I would just like to apologize for my long hiatus, as will be the nature of the topic of this podcast. Kind of going through some standard third density illusion stuff, Dark Night of the Soul, all of that sort of wonderful, difficult illusion that we have to deal with on the daily. And I suppose I am back, and I just wanted to thank you all for hanging around while I maybe wasn't so much active in this area. But I was kind of feeling not so motivated and also sort of feeling like I was running out of things to say. It was becoming repetitive. But I know that when I listen to podcasts that I like, I tend to actually appreciate the fact that somebody is consistent in saying the same things over and over again. They're generally good reminders. So, I'm just reminding myself that it's okay if I am a bit repetitive sometimes, and just to keep on going with this, because I think it's sort of the kinship between you and me, like the listener and the podcaster, that you probably gain more from than just all of the pure philosophy and things like that. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for hanging around and being a part of my service that I'm attempting to do with this type of thing. And let me begin with what we are going to talk about today. So it is easy to become discouraged with the seeming never-ending catalyst that comes our way. The rules of this third density existence require us to go through various dark nights of the soul so that we may drop away those things that no longer serve us, and through transformation create space for new ideas and lessons to manifest. The issue at hand is that it never seems to stop. As is the nature of the universe being infinite, so is the nature of the lessons we are here to learn. There is no beginning or end, just the infinite path towards knowing ourselves. This can be rather disheartening, but it can also create a calm about you depending how you choose to perceive it. Are you a victim of circumstance? Or do you recognize that everyone has their challenges, and although yours may seem dark and difficult, you will hopefully learn what it is that your soul is trying to teach you and be a better, more authentic person than you were previously. In the long scheme of things, everything is one. There is only the illusion of separation. All is well in this oneness, no matter how hard you try to convince yourself otherwise. The illusion is heavy, but necessary for our learning. That understood, the chaos is working as it is intended. It shakes you up, gets you to ponder, burns away what is no longer needed, hopefully leading to patience for the next set of lessons to come. You don't need to conquer all your lessons in a short period of time. You need to learn to be patient, pointing out your will in the direction of wanting to learn, know, and grow, and you will certainly achieve that. It's less about how you run, and more about how deep you wish to know the truth. The will is everything. What you seek shall come to you. And so those were some thoughts that I had written down after finding some nice quotes to read you, and I shall now read you that quote. So normally I read you from Ra or Quo, and Ra is unconscious channeled material and Quo is conscious channeled material. There's a lot of explaining to go in there, but no need. This is from an entity such as Quo called Lima, which is like L-L-E-E-M-A. Isn't that fun? But they're a lovely energy, and they often have some nice channeled things to say. So this is from November 17th, 1985 from Lima, and they are going to say many of the things that I said, probably in a more eloquent way. So they state, "We realize that there is a need within the illusion to find a way of thinking about or dealing with these pressures." And by that they mean these dark pressures. Continuing on, "There are as many ways as there are individuals. One way which we might recommend to you is gentleness with yourself. If you can see yourself as that unique being that is not threatened by extinction by any force from without or from within, then perhaps you can see the possibility of offering to yourself the gift of gentleness, patience, and kindness to the self by the self. Examine, if you wish, a pressure that is causing you anguish, pain, and confusion. Turn it about in your mind, test it, allow the uniqueness that is you to impinge upon that illusion, and then with the kindness and thanking the source of the pressure, the seeming pain, the seeming confusion, allow the self to sound its chord. Perhaps it has been a difficult thing to hear your own beingness. This is understandable, my friends, for you do dwell within a heavy illusion. The heaviness of the illusion is not an error. There is a design which involves your becoming fuller, developing your uniqueness, accentuating certain qualities of being upon which you may have worked for many, many lifetimes. How could you develop without stimulus, even if that stimulus is painful? Look at the world with a kind eye, a gentle eye, a forgiving eye. The world does not mean to hurt. The illusion is doing what it was intended to do, and you may move very quickly and confusedly so that you muddy that beautiful chord which is yourself. Or you may stop and become gentled and thank the illusion for its pressures and its anguish and its pain. You shall not be victorious over it, you shall learn from it, and it shall learn from you. It is well to remember that the undifferentiated terms such as society and family and church are in fact part of yourself which you have called to yourself in order that you may polish up that beautiful, harmonious, infinitely lovely identity that you may develop and thrive without regard for life or death as you know it. We know that this may be somewhat difficult to assimilate, for you are entities who dwell within bodies and who are impinged upon by what seems to be marvelous, strong outer forces. Know, my friends, that all of these outer forces are portions of the creation which you have called to yourself for purposes of development. Know that you do not have to work at this development. You do not have to be a student of development. Indeed, the more active you are, the slower you will be going. Gentleness, patience, and quiet are the bombs of the identity as it waits and watches and loves and chooses. End of quote. And I think that very last paragraph seems to sort of highlight what I'm mostly focusing on in this podcast, which is that life is difficult. It comes with many challenges that are thrown our way, and it is easy to throw the hands in the air and give up and say oh my God, I don't know what to do, and then leads to anxiety and all sorts of then probably negative health outcomes because being stressed and anxious is not healthy for you. So I suppose my thought is that when you're going through these dark nights of the soul, these portions of deeper learning for yourself, just know that the universe doesn't have it out for you. Okay, everyone in third density operates in this same manner. I mean, we may have variations of different lessons that we have to learn, and no one's lessons may be completely the same, but they're very similar in that we're going to be going from one lesson to the next. And so as is the nature of infinity and this universe being infinite, there's not really a beginning or an end. There's just sort of the never-ending infinite path of the Creator knowing itself, and we are a portion of the Creator. So we shall have an infinite path of these types of lessons. But this third density lessons that we experience right now are definitely more shadowed and probably the more difficult ones of our, maybe our entire soul development. And so if you remind yourself to be gentle with yourself, to be patient with yourself as you go through these experiences, you're more likely to come out the other side less damaged, I suppose, than you basically I don't want you to make it harder on yourself than you have to. They do state, right? It seems somewhat paradoxical, but I've understood before that the closer we are to paradox, the closer we are to spiritual truth. So they say that you do not have to work at this development. You do not have to be a student of development. In fact, the harder you go, the slower you will go. And that's like it's sort of like trying to run uphill against a down current, like running against the flow of water. The harder you try, right, the harder it's going to be, and you'll probably actually trip and get pushed back. Whereas maybe if you were attempting to even just walk slowly up a river, against the flow, you're probably going to be making a lot more progress than the person who tries to run and slip and falls and gets pushed all the way back. And of course, this all requires, the self to be patient with the self, which is a beautiful gem a beautiful gift you can give yourself and others, which is, patience for yourself. The more love, tenderness, gentleness, kindness that you can develop within yourself, that inner dialogue that you have. Well, actually, I heard some people don't have inner dialogue, but assuming most people do, in other words, you have thoughts and you talk to yourself, we can be really harsh on ourselves. In fact, I don't know about you, but it's almost like the more kind that you try to be, like sometimes the more harsh you can be on yourself because you see all of these places of your shadow where you're not completely kind. And so it's easy to degrade and hate on yourself when really all that's going to do is then when you're seeing that shadow aspect in other people outside of yourself, you're more likely likely to not be gentle and kind with them. You're more likely to be a lot more harsh in your judgment of them. Whereas if you can find a soft judgment, you still want to judge yourself. There's nothing wrong with judging yourself, but it has to come from a positive place, let's say, as in the more harsh you are to yourself, the more harsh you will be to other people. The more kind and gentle you are to yourself, you'll find that when someone outside of you, a coworker, family member, friend, whatever, is, let's say, misbehaving, or a shadow aspect of themselves is presented to you, it really doesn't offend you anymore. It's almost like funny and interesting that you get to see it in the other person. And, instead of you reacting from a place of trying to defend yourself and be rude back and give slight for slight and eye for an eye, you're more likely to, give a polite and patient smile. And probably don't even necessarily need to defend yourself. In fact, your silence, your non-response to their sort of shadow outburst might be a bigger lesson for them than you think, right? Like, wow, what? I just attacked this person and they didn't attack me back. In fact, they just sort of smiled and sent love my way. What? That's weird. What's going on with them? I wonder if they love themselves to a stronger degree within. Maybe I should look at myself and love myself. Why? How come when someone reacts to shadow aspects to me, why do I always have to react in a in-kind way, in a negative way as well? So, right, as you become more gentle and forgiving for yourself, it just becomes infinitely easier to forgive and be more gentle with other people. And of course, that's going to make your whole life a lot less chaotic, I would think too, right? There's a lot less fighting, a lot less friction between you and other people. But, I can always put an addendum on there, which it would be that sometimes when sometimes people want you to react to their catalyst or to their outburst. And when you don't, it actually triggers them even harder. So I guess I can't say, a generalized statement about everyone, but I do know from my general life experience that the more kind and forgiving I am to myself, the more that I admit that, I don't really know, right? Like, I understand that I don't understand, and that's okay. I even get feedback from people when I'm speaking to them online, like in a comment section where, people are often tempted to be very rude and sleight of hand and give a insult for an insult and degrade down to straw man fallacies and ad hominem attacks, right? I often have people tell me that, I'm actually really impressed with the way that you conversed with that person. Like, they threw a couple of negative sort of stabs your way, and what happened in your response? Well, you ignored the negative things and you sort of tried to work with whatever substance or the general idea of the message that person was trying to convey to you, and you took it on like a good faith attempt at answering them while ignoring all of their attempts at offending you and, right, ad hominem, like personally attacking you. So I can say that not only do I see it within myself, but I get feedback from other selves as well that, wow, I'm impressed with the way that you're able to talk to people and not, fly off the handle. I would never be capable of doing that. Well, my friends, you are capable of doing that. We all have self-love work to do. If you didn't have self-love work to do, right, you probably wouldn't be incarnated here anymore. You'd be moved on to some other place. That is the nature of the third density existence, is that we make the choice on how to serve and how to love, and then we deal with the lessons of love for the remaining amount of time that we have here. And so, my friends, I think that is good for today. I just want to keep a little short and sweet one for you. Just say thank you all for sticking around with me and coming around to check out the podcast. Make sure you give it a like. That helps other people see it. Leave me a comment if you'd like. And I also just wanted to say thanks to a fellow seeker, Gabe. I'm so sorry, Gabe. I have not written you back yet. But he sent me, I didn't ask him or anything like this. He's a longtime follower of the podcast and I think the Instagram page. He, just humbly and freely sent over like the most wonderful little gift package. And like, it's not like the gifts are super like expensive or anything. They're literally just a bunch of little things that he put together on his trip to Egypt, and he thought of me and he sent them. And like, I just honestly, it's one of the best gifts I've ever received probably in my life, just from a fellow seeker. Like, I guess the point of saying this is, A, I want to thank that person, and B, just share with you guys how, freely giving and freely receiving is just, it's the most magical thing, right? Like, I try to freely give this podcast and make a Instagram post daily and share spiritual information and share love, things of that nature. And I try to do it from a place of freely giving. And, if other people feel the gratitude and they want to reciprocate somehow, right? I try not to say no. I try to say, sure, go ahead if you really feel that you'd like to reciprocate something. Like, I freely open to receiving that. And, the gifts you give and the gifts you receive, they will come back tenfold, my friends. So, this whole being a loving being and all this spiritual gaslighting of like, you chose to be here and this third density's hard and this is what you signed up for. It's not all just negative things. There is positive reasons to be out there, and sometimes it takes a fellow seeker who sends a little reminder that all is well, and then you realize all is well, and you get back to life and you get back to doing what you're sort of supposed to be doing out here. So anyways, thank you, my friend. I super appreciate it. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And I will hopefully be doing maybe one a week again. I have a little getaway that I'm going to at the end of February, so there might be a week or two where I drop off again, but I do plan on being somewhat consistent with this again, because my friends, it is one thing that I know is that your consistency in your service and your will to seek and to share is probably one of the most powerful things, right? Like, a choice can be made once, but it can be made twice, it can be made 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, infinite amount of times. It's almost that when that choice just becomes a given, now you've polarized positively, right? And that's the whole thing. Is like, you can make a positive choice once today, but you can make a negative choice tomorrow. And then what does that equal? Well, it equals neutrality. Whereas a consistent giving, serving, seeking to serve, seeking to love, seeking to know the self, the consistency with the will of your, the power of your will, that is where your power is. That's why you don't necessarily have to run through the race, right? You just have to point your will in the direction of knowing. And my friends, I'm sure of it, it will come to you. That's how all of this stuff came to me, was I wanted to know sort of the truth of life. I wanted to know it from a deeper perspective. I didn't want a standard religious explanation. I wanted to know, what the heck is all of this about? And as I asked over a year or two or something along those lines, like the law of one, this material kept popping up into my perception, into my purview, and I just eventually, I was like, oh my God, this must be what I'm asking for. I better go have a read at this thing. So, right, the will to seek is what's important, my friends. So point that will carefully and consistently, and watch the magic flow, my friends. Okay, take care. Love you guys. Have a good one.